did it. We're recording. Yeah. So what I was saying, the way they let you know that you're old over here in Belgium is they send you an envelope with this small, th- this small bag in it with a bunch of stuff that allows you to take a stool sample to check for colon cancer. So that's when you know here officially that you're old. So that's
That
what
you're
they do.
pooping. Yeah, okay. Okay.
So I got that 2 years ago. They don't warn you or anything. That nobody, I mean, the government doesn't tell you like, look, dude. I mean, you're getting to this age where we need to check this shit because, I
Well,
mean, you could develop cancer and it's very expensive for the healthcare system to treat you. So maybe just take a dump and you can just stab with this needle in it and put it in a vial and send it to us. So we'll make sure that you're okay and we pay for it. It's all good. But you don't know about it until you get it. And like, all right, I'm officially old now. I'm not a fully senior citizen. We have different levels, and I
well,
think there's no really good translation in English for what I am right now. But officially old.
gotcha. Gotcha. We have the AARP, American Association of Retired People, and it is really disturbing when they start sending you literature. Oh, well, wait a minute. I do have gray hair. So, yeah, I know the feeling.
Oh, by the way, Barry Eister says hi.
Great, great.
I was just chatting with him this morning, and then he finished his book. He just wrote the end last night. So I'm like, yeah. And he said, "You want to talk?" So I can't because I have a bunch of appointments. I arrive late at night. Maybe tomorrow. So I'm talking to Mark first and maybe after. They're like, "Yeah, say hi to Mark." I'm like, "I'm gonna say hi to Mark."
Excellent, excellent. You
Because
know,
his next book is going to be interesting. I know what it's about, just a broad, just the theme. I'm not going to say anything because it's not my story to tell, but I think it's going to be very interesting and very much appropriate to the times we live in.
whoa, that's going to be fun.
It's not like he has a past of writing about topics that then maybe like a year or two later actually happen in real life.
Yes.
It's not like he's ever done that before.
Not very. No. Yeah, it's actually Diana and I are putting the final wraps on the fantasy novel that we're working on.
Cool. What's it?
And it has been I you know, one of the things is when you have a handicapped wife, you always have to find ways to keep her busy. Okay, well, she's my editor. Well, I wrote the thing and I wrote it with all these okay, this will piss people off. I got to adjust this. I got to, and thinking strategically in my writing, she read it and says, "Oh, hell no." And I was like, okay, so I have no problem putting it in, but do know I'm going to catch hell for this.
Hmm.
Right. So she started, and of course, being kind of Machiavellian, it's like, no, this chapter sucks. Well, do it better.
What is that like then? I mean, working with her like that, not just like here, read this as an editor, but then like, okay, you do it.
Well, she and I have worked, I mean, we've been married for what, over 25 years now? So we've learned how to integrate, and, it's like, plead your case. You say this. Why? Why should we do it this way?
Yeah.
Right. And I'm willing to listen. Right. And, sometimes when it comes to she still thinks I'm wrong, it's like, yeah, but we're going to do it this way anyway.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when you're right, but there's a reason for doing it this way.
Yeah.
Oh, and that one it's funny because I just posted on Facebook something that cracked me up. It says, you know, my old person thinking is, and then you list all these, like, oh, I think, it should be on a website and or an app. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense. Well, there's a lot of stuff in modern lighting that just drives me nuts. Okay. A guy named Jim Butcher makes a habit of, he says, don't preach harder than you can tell a good story.
Yep.
Good idea. But on the other hand, so much of this, I have real serious problems with, writing girl bosses, Mary Sue's, the perfect female who has all these things. She can do this, she's a PhD and all this, and it's like, you're 17. No, I don't, so, writing about the process, but also one of the things that I really had a lot of fun with, and we were talking about the TV series Yellowstone before we started recording, is one of my favorite scenes out of the movie Deadwood, or out of the series Deadwood, was basically a background scene where a guy needed to talk to the doctor. He rode up to the doctor's house, and there's the doctor out in his front yard splitting wood, right? Not really relevant to the story because the plot was doing this, but here is a guy doing manual labor who is a bastion of the town,
Mm.
right? And it's sort of like, no, life at this time required a mindset and the willingness to do stuff that we have become so disconnected in our world, right? If you're cold, push a button on the thermostat, right? Now, I've lived in a place where the only central heating was a basic, well, it was basically a stove, right? Not that you cook on, but it's one of those old Ben Franklin type thing. I had to build fires to stay warm. Now, this also gave me access to the woodpile gym, which, let me tell you, keeps you fit and trim as you're splitting wood so you don't freeze.
Yeah. It's a workout.
Yeah, it is. It is definitely a workout, but the mindset that you have to survive in that environment, you can't take for granted certain things. And a lot of the book that, is them talking while they're doing stuff. And, the necessity of having to do that stuff. And it really changes how people think. And I did that because I wanted to show a different way of thinking,
Mm.
right? That you can't just assume that all the things that you prioritize now in your life, right, will go there. And this is why they think differently. And it's without preaching about thinking differently, just the
Just show it.
challenges.
No.
Yeah, show the daily challenge. And I mean, it starts out with a 1,400-mile travel, which today, what we go to, jump on the car, go to the airport, and you were there. No, this takes months, and takes months of preparation, including having your own mule train to carry everything you need. Right. Just totally different mindsets. And and her slowly getting the main character getting into the mindset and realizing, because she's lived a very sheltered life.
Yeah.
Right.
It's funny. I mean, I found that this is one of the topics that I've been talking about more and more in the past few years for a variety of reasons, and it's the old trope of weak men create hard times and all that kind of thing, and
Mhm.
it's true, obviously. It goes against a lot of the things also that younger people are running up against when they discover that no, the arc of history doesn't tend towards the positive. We can slide back as well.
Right.
And when we slide back, we discover something that is, I think, a universal truth. Is that as far as we know, and again, for folks listening to this that already heard me do that spiel, I apologize. As far as we know, this is the only planet in the universe that allows for human life. All the rest, you cannot survive as we
Hmm.
are right now. You'll die, mostly instantly.
Yes.
Here on this planet, pretty much the vast majority of the surface of the planet is water, so you'll drown. And
Hmm.
the rest of it, a huge portion of it, you cannot survive longer than 24 hours.
Hmm.
Many of these places, not even an hour. If they drop you buck naked there, you got nothing, you die. So it's testament to just the ingenuity and the perseverance of mankind that we've made it this far, and that we've
Yes.
achieved the level of technology and comfort that we
Hmm.
have right now. And again, it's an old trope is that the even homeless people right now in the United States has access to better healthcare than the richest people over a century and a half ago.
Yes.
So um, poverty worldwide is declining. Standard of living worldwide is increasing
Hmm.
constantly. This trend hasn't changed. Yet people don't understand why that happens. And um, again, also I mentioned this before. When my kids turned 18, I kidnapped them for like about a day. We went to Antwerp, talked about a lot of stuff,
Uh-huh.
and I took them to the harbor, which is a hub of petrochemical
First.
industry and many other things.
Hmm.
And I said, look, we drove for 5 minutes. It's a city in and of itself. It's huge. I
Yes.
worked there several times doing workshops and so on. It's gigantic. I said, look, everything in this car that you see here is impossible without all this industry here.
Yes.
Petrochemicals, your clothes, your car, the seat, your cell phone, your glasses, everything needs that now. You can become an eco warrior if you want, and you want to change the world and save the planet. That is fine. First, find a way to replace all this.
Yes.
If you
Find
don't,
working way to
yeah,
replace this.
yeah, at scale, right?
Yes.
Because we're
Yes.
talking about billions of people,
Yes.
and then you can tear this down. If you don't have that solution, what will happen is that you're going to kill millions and millions of people instantly.
Yes.
And I said, if you want to do that, that's fine. However, there is a cost to taking all this away. And just today, I had this discussion with somebody talking about, environmental change and all that kind of stuff. So I'm like, look, I don't disagree that that human activity has an effect on the
And
climate.
the fact, yes.
Obviously, that only makes sense. The question is how much and how bad is it, and what do we do about it? Opinions vary.
Yes.
Now, in mainstream media, not so much. There's dogmatic thinking. I'm like, that's fine. I think there's other information that says that when maybe it's a little bit more nuanced. But even let's take worst case scenario. The solution right now that's being implemented in Europe means that the quality of life is going to slide back very rapidly. Economic, not even talking about recession, but depression.
No.
Industry is leaving Europe. I'm fortunate that for the past 30 plus years, I've been training CEOs, entrepreneurs, and so on. And I talk to them, they're all saying the same thing. The big multinationals are talking about leaving Europe. Some of them already have. They're doing it more and more. Germany is on its way to become a wasteland because they went all in on renewables, closed down nuclear plants, and the energy is gone. Cheap energy gone, no industry. No industry, your economy is down the drain. I'm like, and you can say, well, we just have to reduce demand for energy. I'm like, okay, you mean the result of that is going to be austerity, and
Yes.
everybody's going to hurt, except the very rich. They never
Yeah.
hurt.
Yeah.
Um, and like this is what you wanted. The old Tom Cruise, Jack Reacher meme before he beats up the five guys. Remember, you wanted this. So I've been
Yes.
sharing that a lot. Anyway, long story short, people don't know how shit works.
Yeah. And the thing that I find very heartwarming about you taking your kids to the harbor is once you see how I call it the machine. Once you see how the machine works and you realize that it's kind of like a Led Zeppelin that is somehow up in the air. And when you realize how dependent we are on that working, what you really want to do is look up at it and go, stay up, please stay up. You know, knowing that really inoculates you against the idea of, oh no, we need to get rid of all this. because you're talking about killing millions of people and millions of people dying if this, if this Led Zeppelin crashes, right? And I know you think it's a really great idea, but you have no idea how hard it will get. I married into a ranching family. Okay? Now, apparently, many people believe that beef comes from the magic beef tree that grows out behind the supermarket. And they just go out and pluck it and then package it. But they have no idea what the supply chain is for the food they eat.
Yeah.
It's amazing the technology and what it takes to keep that process running. So, yeah, I know your professor is telling you all this stuff about how good these other systems are, but I've actually walked in places that were under communism, socialism, and yeah.
I was in Moscow just before Yeltsin grabbed power. Saw firsthand, and story often told as well, where they would drive us from the hotel back to towards the arena because I was competing there, and there was this like a huge square, and there were hundreds of people just milling about, saw it every day. And then I asked the interpreter, "What is that? What's going on?" Said, "Oh, that's a swapping meet. So you arrive with whatever you have and try to swap and barter to get
Right.
something better." And then you see people just arrive with like a plastic bag that they found on the street somewhere. I'm like, "Do you need a plastic bag? What can I get?" And so on. Like hardcore third world poverty. I'm like, okay, you can go on communism if you like, and you can say that it's never been tried before. And sure, you are the one who's going to make it work. But we do have a fair amount of evidence. I was in China in 91, saw a bunch of stuff there too. Like there's a fair amount of evidence that A, it leads to mass genocide, and B, it doesn't fucking work.
Yes.
Does it mean that capitalism is without fault? It's not. That's not what that
Right.
means.
Right.
But
But
if you've never been to a communist or former communist country, I would suggest that first you drink a cup of shut the fuck up, and talk to people who fled from those countries and why.
yes,
Do
not
that
to
first.
listen to the people who ran from it.
Yeah.
I have two things. The late great Stephen Brown. I don't know if you're familiar with
Yeah,
him.
he was one of my patrons for a while.
Love the man dearly, and his loss is truly felt because he was the guy that I could call and talk to about weird things, and he'd come out periodically, and we just have rambling, weird conversations. But he pointed out that of the 95 countries that have tried communism, okay, every single one of them sent their best and their brightest to college to figure out how to make it work. And now there's only 5 left. So you got a pretty good failure rate. But then I was listening to this one guy and he pointed something out, and I was like, I am so stealing that. I'm not even, hoist the Jolly Roger, the pirate flag. I'm taking that. Is, when people come up with the argument, oh, well, that isn't real communism. And the reason it failed is that it's not real communism, is to ask them to point out where real communism exists. And quite naturally, they're going to point to the book. Right? And his response was, that's like pointing to a romance novel and saying it's real love.
Well, the counter that I give to that is that, real capitalism has also never been tried.
True.
Because there's
True.
always government intervention and laws
Yes.
and regulations.
Yes.
So
And
if we put both next to each other, which one has lifted up societies and humanity? I think, communism doesn't really have a great track record by
it does not.
comparison.
And yet the other thing, and this is where it's really important to understand, is that yes, you have the two things and they interlock, but they also balance. Right. And it's not that this one's better than this one, right? That to keep things running, to keep the wheels from falling off, you do need a blend,
Yeah.
but it's how far do you go one way or the other?
And this is kind of the idea of, the pendulum swings both ways.
Yeah.
I kind of like Balaji Srinivasan's idea of it's not just a pendulum; it gets more complex. There's also history running in reverse, so that we kind of go back to what has been done before.
Yeah.
He just made this point. It's I pulled it up on my phone so I could read it because you posted a few days ago, and great wailing and gnashing of teeth was heard across the land. I
That was
laughed my
about as
ass off.
political as I tend to get on those posts. Yes.
And and if and Balaji wrote something about, okay, it's been a few days. What has Trump done so far? And then lists a bunch of stuff, and he said, like, it's not going to be the America of the 1950s or 60s that goes back, more like 1850. He says it's probably more going to be more on that way. Now I'm going to add it to the notes because otherwise I'm going to forget. And then Baji here, so I'll put links in the show notes for people to see. Can you still see me? Yep. Okay, we're here because every now and then the video is going to freeze. The
Yeah, I got
recording
you.
is
You
going to be
froze
fine, but
for
the
a second.
video freezes on our ends. Okay. So a lot of people have said
That
that
happens.
the scariest words in the English language are Balaji was right. Interesting guy to follow, really interesting, very, very smart, brilliant, and has been more right than he has been wrong. And
Yeah.
some of the stuff is scary. Um, I recently posted something on X where I do get political. Not so much on Facebook and the rest because they have an issue with that, but X is now like
Mhm.
basically whatever you want. And yeah, so like now is the time to start looking for the right slash conservative side to go too far. Now it's time to start
Yeah.
looking for
Yes.
that.
Yes.
We're at this phase where now, so the cultural war is not over, but the woke postmodernist side is very much losing. It's not going to go away without a fight.
No,
Uh,
it's yeah.
and Trump has a really large, a large meal on his plate with what he wants to do, and so
And
far, the DEI stuff, getting rid of that in government and so on. From what I have seen, because I'm keeping track, they seem to be pretty smart in the way they go about it. I think they have a really good chance of actually achieving a lot, getting rid of a lot of the insanity of postmodernism and how it has destroyed America in many ways that a lot of
Yeah.
people still don't see. But that stuff is very deeply entrenched. We're talking tens of thousands of employees. Um, we'll see. We'll see. But if that happens, I think there's a good chance that eventually you're going to get a very different society where meritocracy is restored, as opposed to
That would be nice.
CRT, and I think it has a good shot at bringing the United States in a different direction. We'll see. It's very early days because a counter revolution, which is basically what we're having right now, doesn't always succeed.
No.
So we'll
And
see.
there's also other factors here. One of the things there's a term here called deep state, which tends to be voiced out as, it's kind of an Illuminati conspiracy, right? Nebulous, shadowy figures controlling things. I don't like using the term because it has connotations, unless I am talking about a very specific social caste who are people who have a cycle of employment that they they're related to each other, et cetera. And we do have this caste. And I mean, I can't, if somebody knows about India and the caste system there, they'll understand that. But most people, what do you mean? Um, but I was looking into history and I found that Woodrow Wilson, who was the president of the United States, wrote about creating what he called the administrative state. And that is under the presidential or executive, you create agencies who are specializing in a particular topic. And you can bring in people who know about this subject, who, can make informed decisions. They can act faster than Congress. And I'm going, okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. And then he kind of makes the left turn that takes him off over the edge of the bridge, which he says, and this will be free of politics
Mhm.
and corruption. It's like, you sweet summer child, you. And the thing is, in the United States, we have really floated far into the administrative state. Okay. The bureaucracy is just out of control. And quite frankly, I blame the Republicans as much as I blame the Democrats for the state of affairs.
Yeah.
The weird thing we were talking earlier about how, the decay of standards and service. Well, the more money you give these guys, the worse the service, right? And the less efficient they are about getting it. And it is bad. Now, I have a little birdie who tells me things, and he's pretty high up in the federal government, right? And he told me as of the election day, there was panic in the upper echelons of many federal departments. People are taking early retirement. They are freaking out. They are just, that's it. I'm done. I'm retiring. A lot of other people started looking for other jobs, right? So they, they're like, I can't work under this guy. I'm out of here. And so it became kind of self-selecting already starting out, right? The problem is over the, last few years, the way things have been working have been decaying and costing more. And the American public got tired of it. What a lot of people, okay, sidetrack, because that's how my brain works. Do you remember Nicholas Chauvin?
No.
Okay, do you remember being called chauvinists?
Oh, yeah.
Because in the 1970s, the feminists took that word, male chauvinist pig. Well, actually, Nicholas Chauvin was a crippled Napoleonic era soldier on a stipend, and he was really all for Napoleon. No matter what Napoleon did, Napoleon could not do any wrong, right? He was the savior of France, right? And that's how his name got associated with that kind of fanaticism. Okay. The we can talk about political chauvinism now, and you can divide it into, is somebody a Republican or a Democrat chauvinist? And the thing is, they have fealty to either an individual or a party. And no matter what, their side can do no wrong and the other side can do no right. And it's really unpleasant. And yes, right now we are coming out of a time of the Democrat chauvinism, right? And there was so much stuff done under this last administration that is a disaster. Okay. And then they really revealed this word, like a shark fin in the water. It was showing how corrupt this previous administration was. Okay. And a lot of that was done under the guise of DEI and, helping the people and all these wonderful things. Right. And they had, since that administration was in power, they basically canceled and told everybody else to shut up. You couldn't question. Right. Well, the thing is, now that the vote has come through, a lot of people didn't vote for Trump, but they voted to get rid of the current administration. Right. So it's like, oh, the right wing have taken over America right now. It's like, no, this is a lot of people are getting pissed about what happened in the last 4 years. And they're not rabid chauvinists. They're not MAGA per se, but they are pissed. So, it's kind of like a punk who's got an older brother that would protect him. Okay, so the punk is being really, really obnoxious, and then the older brother gets into prison.
Oops.
Yeah, oops. So, that's one thing. I know the media hates Trump, and a lot of the stuff I see from overseas is, that the, right wing have taken over in America. And I think he's going to do a lot of damage. But on the other hand, I think a lot of these things that have been put in place need to be taken down.
Yeah. Well, over here, I mean, just this morning I had an appointment with somebody I've been training for a long time. We often talk politics and a lot of stuff. And I'm in the fortunate position that I get to talk to people who are entrepreneurs, CEOs, and so on, that I would normally never be able to talk to. So and I always learn something. Like the person that I trained this morning, I've learned so much from him over the years. But obviously when I disagree, I will say so. And this is something that I've tried to explain, is that our mainstream media, the way that they cover the United States, is horrendously bad. It is extremely bad. And then people say, like, yeah, but which sources do you use? I'm like, look, there's something that I cannot give you, which is what I did. I stopped reading English translations when I was 18 because I read a book by Clive Barker in Dutch, and I liked it. It's horror stories. And then by accident, I got the original one, and I read it. It was just so much better. Like, I'm done with translations. I want to read original English only.
Right.
You and I started talking, I think, over 25 years ago.
Yes.
So for the past about 30 years, I've been talking pretty much daily with people in the United States. The biggest part of my friend circle is Americans, and left, right, center, extremists, middle of the road people, high positions, low positions, anything in between. Been doing that for decades now.
Yes.
And I can't tell you how many times that way back when, in the beginning, I saw something in the news over here, and I asked somebody, that I know in the US, like, how about this? And like, no, that's not what happened. This is in my city, or my son lives there.
Yeah.
This is what happens here. Read the local news. And
yes.
Like, oh, okay. So our Belgian news is completely wrong once again. I started paying attention more and more and more. I could see that the news that we get here is either wrong, or so one-sided, or so limited, or such a selection that they show things that are completely either missing context, or just twist the words in such a way that you get Orange Man bad.
Yeah.
And
let the words. Yes.
Do one more thing. And what he said to me is like, look, I see Trump, and I see the way he talks, and basically I can't stand the guy. And I'm like, I get that. I totally get that. Trump is a New Yorker. That would be that our equivalent is the people from Antwerp. People from Antwerp, they say that Antwerp is the city and the rest of Belgium is the parking lot. So New Yorkers, pretty much the same thing. I'm sorry, I have friends in New York. Guys, you know how you are. Trump is a New Yorker, and he is an elite New Yorker at that.
Yeah.
He is the nobility of the United States. Whether you like him or not, doesn't matter. He talks a certain way. Plus, he's a media figure. He's been doing media, TV for decades on end. he the if you cannot make abstraction from the persona Donald Trump and what he says, two different things.
Yes.
Third thing, what he actually does.
Yes. Yes.
And this is the disconnect. People they hate, when he talks, then they listen to what he says, and then they don't follow up what he actually does.
Right.
And we get really skewed news here that talks about all these kind of things. This is what he said. Oh my God, the sky is falling. He's going to do this and that. And I'm like, guys, we've had 4 years of him in president. The economy was going to fail. He's going to start new wars. Going to this and that. None of it happened. Literally only a few months ago, Obama was saying that Trump is a fascist. Trump is Hitler. When was the funeral of Jimmy Carter? He's sitting next to Trump. They're joking. He's laughing. And I'm like, guys, Obama is laughing and joking with literally Hitler. Why aren't you canceling him? Because they know it's bullshit.
Yes.
And this is the huge thing. You've got the balkanization of the United States. It's been going on for a long time. Like you said, chauvinism, polarization, and so on. And then here we get this basically cleaned up, sanitized version in which, for instance, our foreign correspondent who's in the United States for our state TV literally says to people on Twitter, on X now, is like, you watch too much Fox News when somebody gives an argument against his reporting. Or after Trump was shot at that rally, the both could graze his ear, a guy says, well, he was shot. Our, again, taxpayer reporter, right? Taxpayer journalist, journalist, national news. He says, barely. I'm like, how do you expect anybody to take you seriously if this is the level of communication you have? And you're entitled to your opinion, but then don't expect anybody to take you seriously as a journalist. You can think what you like. I don't have an issue with that, but maybe it's not a great idea to do that publicly on social media. And it's fine by you, but people, I've been telling friends and family here for years, like, don't read, mainstream news here about the United States. If you do, start there and then go looking. I will give you sources if you like. There's a bunch of people you can follow on the left, on the right, and center, which is what I do. And then you make up your own mind. And you guys have the same problem. If you watch CNN the whole time, you're not informed. If you watch Fox News the whole time, you're not informed either.
Right.
Well, ranting.
Woodsword, if you don't read the paper, you're uninformed. If you do read the paper, you're misinformed. Mark Twain. Well, along those lines, I picked up a thing from one of my friends, and he is one of those guys that did that thing over in that place with those guys.
And where it's supposed to be.
Who? What are you talking about?
Well, they weren't there, basically.
Yeah. One of the things that they do with intelligence gathering is overlays. They'll take one source, they'll overlay it with another, and I mean, they're transparent overlays, so you can see where, like, okay, this is where they disagree. This is what one side is saying. This is what the other side is saying, but they're not mentioning what the others are talking about. And when you begin to do overlays like that, you can begin to see, all right, this factor will change this. And they're not talking about it over here. They're hiding it, right? And this side is talking about stuff that, they have their own, they don't want you to see this. So, doing overlays gives you an approximation of what's going on. And the wider spectrum you do, right, the more you see, okay. And I mean, the thing is, Trump right now is a wild card with how he lights people up, but also, I can never remember if the pronunciation is KFAB or KFABI. With professional wrestling, the WWF, I mean, that's one of those, like, I'm embarrassed to admit that's a big thing here in the United States. But with professional wrestling, people go, oh, it's fake. Well, it actually is choreographed. I'll give you all that. But KFAB is the story that they agree to tell. Right. What's going on underneath is not, that's what's happening, but it's not what you see and it's not what you hear. And for the longest time, the Republicans and the Democrats played by gentlemen's rules of KFAB. And then comes this bull in a china shop. Right. And, I don't like the guy personally.
Me neither.
Yeah.
People think I'm a fan. I'm not.
Yeah. I'm like, no. But on the other hand, looking at and a truly terrifying thing to me, and this is part of what led to my, starting to use the word chauvinism, is, Joe Biden's fine. Joe Biden's, he's competent, he's capable, he's running for it, we'll do it. And then you see the debate.
The debate, yeah.
Right. And watching it going, wait a minute. And then there was one little thing that, again, handicapped wife. Okay. My life is, largely devoted to keeping her safe. Okay. I watched Biden walk up to the edge of a stage, and then his wife came up and assisted him down the steps.
I remember.
Right. Did you notice the catcher?
That is the second guy. Yeah.
Second,
He walked up. Yeah.
Yeah, to catch him and then moved. Yeah. And I'm like, that's a disabled person. Right. And also knowing something about sundown or Alzheimer's, which is you're fine in the morning and you're not in the afternoon. Well, the thing was, the scuttlebutt had been that he had been decaying. Right. And they kept it quiet. All right. Then he showed poorly during the debate. And then, okay, I'm not running for re-election. And it was amazing to me to see the transfer from Biden to Harris.
Like in a week.
Yeah, in a week.
Sudden.
And, honestly, something that terrified me is now that we knew it, okay, now that it became clear who's been running this country for the last few months.
I said exactly the same thing today.
And more than that, who's been running this for the last few years? And stories are creeping out about, people coming forth and it's like, yeah, I tried to meet the president for a while. They kept on putting me up. Yeah. And it's sort of like, what is going on behind the scenes here? Right. Now, I don't like what was being done under this or the last administration. Okay, because it kind of struck me like a bunch of people were like, "Hey, I want this to happen. Here, sign this." And this is elder abuse.
Yeah.
Right, but at the same time, all these things, and like I said, I don't like the guy. I figure Republicans are just as guilty as the administrative state. And this guy's coming in like a bull in a china shop. And there's going to be chaos. There's going to be a lot of slamming and crushing the way things have been done. But at the same time, while I agree this stuff needs to be done, okay, there's really good, humane, necessary stuff, right? But do we need to do it the way we've been doing it? Yeah. Right.
Go ahead.
And that, especially goes with DEI, right? There's a lot of money being made with DEI and absolute crap service in the pursuit of it.
Yep. The thing I most to see is that, late 23, the client I talked about that I talked to today, I said Biden's not going to run for re-election. he's got Alzheimer's, dementia, something like that, and he's like, you're insane. It's conspiracy theory. No, nope. So, you can watch video. It's like, and then obviously, he can counter that with, well, here's a video of him being coherent. Yes, that is how Alzheimer's work. Like you said, sundowning. It's like,
Huh?
if you pick the moments and so on, this is what will happen. A week before the debate, we got, what is it, Morning Joe, the morning show where they're like, I've never seen a sharper Biden. Age is a superpower, and this and that. And the week after, you see the tragedy of the debate, where you can clearly see, like, okay,
Mhm.
that man is not capable of being by himself, let alone run the country. And
Mhm.
then they did the switch to Harris, and then we're not supposed to talk about this anymore. Now, after years of the mainstream press covering for Biden, now what is it? Wall Street Journal, I think Time Magazine or The Economist, bringing out all those articles like, yeah, well, actually the staffers were, hiding Biden from the rest of the staff in the world and making sure that they only schedule in the mornings because in the afternoon, nothing that we can do with him, and this and that. And it's all coming out. I'm like, this is what I've been saying for almost 2 years that was happening. You're a conspiracy nut. And now the mainstream media gives does that reporting. Now you believe it. Take a step back now. If you believe them for years on end about Biden's condition, and now they admit that they were lying at best, sorry, at worst, which I think was the case, but at best that they were either misinformed,
Mhm.
uninformed, or didn't do their job properly. Regardless of which one it is, in all these scenarios, why do you trust them now on anything they say?
I will add one more element to your list, and that is they were actively participating. And, that, we have history of that in this country with um, Roosevelt. Roosevelt, Franklin Roosevelt spent most of his time in a wheelchair, right? He
Yep.
could not walk. The media participated in covering this up. Now, I'll cut you some slack because this is a wartime situation. Right? So I can kind of see that, but as he was going down, he was decaying in the last few months of his presidency or of his life. And it's like, who's running World War II?
Yeah. Yeah. Just to type in here.
Yeah. And the thing that, again, this is why I so love chauvinism. I was talking about Democrat chauvinism, and then my friend says that needs to be political chauvinism. And as a blanket topic, he's right. You can break it into the things. And one of the things I'm watching is people are going, MAGA maniacs, the MAGNA supporters are rabid. And it's like, yeah, they are for him. And they are very much for him. They do exist. And yet there's a whole lot of other people who are not that rabid for the Republicans. Maybe it's just the time we're coming out of. But again, watching the public without missing a beat go from Biden to Harris, right? And it's like, you don't care who's in charge, just so long as your party is in charge.
And Biden was going to save democracy. So once you see that guy can't win, then you don't have primaries. Just the big wigs of the DNC decide that we're going to anoint Kamala as the new candidate, and shut your mouth, you plebeian. Why do you think you have an actual say in this? We're going to save democracy by shutting you up and picking a candidate for you. Now shut up and vote for us.
Okay. And yes, everything you just said, there has always been backroom deals
Of course. Of course.
about, at the primaries, okay, we want to run this guy. Okay. what was really interesting was in 2016, the DNC, Democratic National Convention, right, which is the party itself, not the candidate, changed their rules because it looked like Hillary was not going to win the, the primaries. And they had all these young people who were there wanting this guy, that guy, the other guy. And what the DNC did is they changed the rules for super delegates. They created super delegates, which is like, yeah, I know you want Bernie Sanders as the candidate, but the super delegates all say Hillary, and that's who we're going to run. So then you get into now shut up and vote for who we tell you.
Well, that's as far as I remember, that's why Tulsi Gabbard basically ran into trouble because
Yes.
she was like, "No, I'm not going to give my vote to Hillary." Like, you just made Hillary's shit list, and we see what happened to her. She was basically blackballed, and her career went down the drain. And then this is something again. I've also talked to people about this. Like, so they're all like, "Oh, they're all MAGA people." I'm like, why are people like Tulsi, like RFK, like Joe Rogan, who's a lefty? I've been listening to him for well over 10 years. That guy is on the left. Same thing. Elon Musk was on the left. He was pro-Democrat. Why do they switch parties? I wouldn't even say switch parties. Why do they abandon the Democrat Party? Think about that. Why are so many people voting for a guy like Trump?
What?
Again,
Yes.
I'm by far no fan. I'm not a fan of any politician. I typically loathe them all.
Right.
But I'm like, just have some introspection. Like, what am I? Any good CEO, when a product fails, says what went wrong. They do a post-mortem. What went wrong? Did we fuck up the launch? What's wrong with the product? Like, no, all the other products are bad. That is the equivalent to what's going on right now with the Democrat Party and in a lot of the media. It's like, no, everybody's wrong. They're all fascists. They're all wrong. They're all bad people. Okay, so you're saying that, what is it, like, I don't know, 60% of Americans are bad or something like that? Like,
yeah.
Can you not see?
The thing is, okay, I was raised a California liberal. Okay. I make no bones about it. And quite frankly, many of the ideas that I was raised with, I still adhere to. I still believe in. Okay. And the funny thing about it is you will hear about walkaways.
No.
People who walk away from the Democrat Party, but the same thing is, I don't feel that, I mean, yes, experience has taught me to, consider different things, but I don't feel that I left the liberal position. It left me.
Well, there's been research done about that where it's clear that the Democrats moved over far to the left. I think the Republicans moved a little bit to the right. I saw the study. It's been a while, but it clearly showed like over time this has happened. Then a lot of people say like, yeah, my party abandoned me. I've had the same thing here in local politics. I mean, in Belgian politics, any party that I ever that I voted for abandoned me. I call myself a political orphan. They always abandon me, like whatever they say. And eventually, again, Belgium is like a microcosm of fucked up politics. I mean, we don't even have a government right now. You guys have one. We don't have one. Hold on, dude. So we have number one. I have this awesome meme. It's like a map with a world map with only Belgium and the United States. And Belgium says, "Come at me, bro."
Send it to me. Send it to me.
And we are number one, Mark. We're number one. We have the world record in forming a government. Longest time ever. We took longer than Iraq did after the Gulf War. So we are now in third place in the rankings. I am willing to bet that we're gonna go for at least second place, so that we have gold and silver medal. And if we really try hard, we're gonna break our own records.
Man, I remember you and I talking about the first time that Belgium doesn't have a government. And I mean, this is how fucked up is it that we can speak of this and, well, the first time Belgium didn't have a government.
We had elections in June last year, and there's no victory in sight in the formation. So the guy doing the negotiating gave himself to the end of this month, so next week, and we'll see what happens. And I'm like, guys, it's not like there's like really urgent stuff. Like in mid-February, another one of our nuclear plants is closing down. If I'm not mistaken, we have the second or third most expensive electricity in Europe. Germany is number one, and we're second or third underneath. Our industry is failing, is leaving. We had the highest amount of bankruptcies in the last, I think, about 20 years. So
Out.
can you read the tea leaves? Can you see
Yes.
what's going
Yeah.
on? And we have a national debt that is gigantic and growing, and we are basically in a situation where we're going to have to clean up the government's finances worse than we had to do in the 80s, which was really freaking rough. Because I remember I was very young back then, but I remember my parents talking about it. And everybody was angry. We're facing now is worse than then, and they're like, no, we've got time. We're still
Can I ask you
negotiating.
something then? Um, I have been making a distinction between corruption and graft. And that is the corruption is you want something done and you pay me to vote a certain way.
Mm.
Okay. I talk about graft like with bloatware and administrative state, where they're actually milking the system, and you can actually almost call it a career. Like all the DEI departments and the insane pay rates that these guys. So in the 80s, was it corruption that was the problem? Can you speak about?
Not necessarily. The biggest issue that we have is that we have a dysfunctional state. The system of governance is completely messed up. I'll illustrate this with when COVID happened 4 years ago, almost five. It turned out that Belgium, for a population of about 11 million people, which is like a big city in the United States, we have, and I don't want to say this wrong, it's either 7 or 8. I don't think it's 9, but it's not 6. It's 7 or 8 ministers of health, who all of them had authority, but none of them, nobody knew who has the responsibility to take the lead now and actually do something about it.
Okay.
So that's
Okay.
Belgium. So we are an ethnic state, like in the former Yugoslavia, with different ethnic
Yes.
populations.
Yes. They're different groups.
I have a hard time keeping track. We have 4 governments officially, but it gets more complex than
I thought
that.
there were 3 ethnic states or 3 ethnic groups. You have governments?
Well, yes, we have. So I'm Flemish, so that's one. We have a government. Brussels has also a government. They're
Right.
mostly French speaking, supposedly bilingual, but never mind. Wallonia, which is French speaking, they have a government, and then the German part we go after the Second World War as a compensation. They have a government, but we also have a federal government. I'm at 5, I think.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
and the people who have been in power for a long time, and then there's the ethnic tensions that are linguistic in nature, kind of like Quebec in Canada, similar but not the same. Have created many problems over the years. And one of the things we had is what we call waffle iron politics, which basically Flanders gets an investment in the port of Antwerp. Well, Wallonia then needs to have the same amount of money to invest in something. And then what we have the Hellandvlak van Ronquier, which is basically a lift for boats. So it's this whole system of levies and stuff that basically is a lift for boats.
Yeah.
Never mind that it's never going to be, recoup the money that is invested in it. Doesn't matter. They get that, we get the same amount. That went on for a very long time. Now, in good times, not really an issue. In
Yep.
bad times, that is a huge
That's
issue
a-
because that is the way our politics worked, and to a degree still works. If that ethnic community or that side of the country gets $10 million, we need to get $10 million too. You don't need them. Doesn't matter. We get the same thing. So you can't run a budget that way. And then you had the oil crisis and you had a bunch of other stuff going on. And we were basically screwed. And now we're screwed worse. We're actually screwed worse. And we have a generation of politicians, like Barley said, who couldn't build the systems they inherited. So they can't run them.
Mhm.
So they tear down because they start taking shit out that is actually needed. And people who are competent leave. And we are replaced by midwits.
Yes.
One of my students is an engineer. He's brilliant. He's genius level smart. It's kind of like Justin, but
Mhm.
in a different way. He gets paid a fair amount of money to travel all over the world to open plants, including in China.
Mhm.
And he said, look, we were talking about some of the changes that the construction they did here, roadworks, and then at the end of it, I was like, this is even worse than it was before. When we drive here, everything is more dangerous. Yada yada yada. He says, when I graduated, all the smart engineers went to go work for multinationals like I do and so on. And the worst of us of the whole class, the last of the class, they went to go work for the government. And I'm sure there's smart people in those administrations. I'm not saying that. But he said, and I believe him, because when I see how everything here gets messed up when the government touches it, I'm like, yeah, the people, doing the technical work, I don't think they're the brightest bulbs around.
No, no. And by the way, I don't know if you have access to this, but we have on our cable thing the Great Courses channel.
I know of it. We don't have it, I think, on cable, but I know of it.
Right. Well, I've been watching or epic engineering disasters and what they teach us. Right. And it's like, wow, how many times has this guy in this series said, well, it met code at the time. And yeah, that's you know, do the best and brightest, leave government, or, have they left government and who are they replacing them with?
Yeah.
And a lot of the stuff, again, yeah, you haven't walked on your shadow has not darkened my doorway in a while. We had the civil engineers from the town of Castle Rock, despite the entire neighborhood coming together and saying, we don't want these changes. Okay. We were told we were getting an upgrade to the roads, the sewers, and sidewalks. Right. Yeah. Basically, my property went whoop after they got done. And, the most telling moment was, yes, the people said no, the town did it anyway for the money. And they had come to this meeting to see, and we'll have the city engineers, we'll have civic engineers there telling you about this process. And now, I'm old and gray, but I was still gray, just not as old. When I walked in and I'm talking to the civil engineer, and I said, how long is this project going to take? And she said, oh, 6 months. And I looked at her, I said, either you're lying to my face or you've never been on a construction site. The conversation didn't go well after that, right? But I can tell you that I have lived on dirt roads for extended period of times for 3 times in my life. Once was rural Washington in the 1970s. The other 2 have been in the town of Castle Rock when they were improving the structure and things went horribly, horribly wrong. So, yeah, I mean, on the other hand, when you take me and you take my wife and the city comes in and says, we're going to do this and shut up and take it.
That's not go over well. Well, let me say 2 things. So first, an example of the same thing here. When I picked you up at the airport first time you came to Belgium, we drove over what we call a viaduct, which is like a big bridge over the water here in Vilvoorde. That was built in, I think, the 60s. Could be the 50s, but I think the 60s. Now it's getting old. It needs to be basically redone.
Mm-hmm.
Building a new one next to it, impossible, they say. So they're gonna have to totally redo it and bring it basically up to spec with modern times, get rid of the concrete rods, all that kind of stuff. I think there's also asbestos in there and so on. The thing was built in the 60s in, I think, 3 or 4 years. It is going to take at least 7 years to bring it up to spec now. This is the busiest place, the piece of highway in Brussels. At certain points in time, there's going to be only one lane open in one direction. So, one of my clients does construction. I mean, huge projects, and it's like it was gonna be like 4 years, and then all of a sudden they added a bunch of stuff to it, and now sort of several years get stacked on, and that is best case scenario. I'm not talking delays or problems. This
Oh
is
yeah,
what they
yeah,
foresee
definitely.
right
Yes.
now. So, and I told my daughter, because I know where she works. It's like, if you want to move, go live by yourself, as she has done, get on the other side of the bridge,
Yeah.
because if you need to get to work there, you're gonna be screwed. Like, you have no idea how bad it's gonna get. Because I've been driving there for the past 35 years,
Mm-hmm.
and I can tell you that it's horrible. So that's one aspect. So why does that happen? For a variety of reasons. You got corruptions, grift, and so on, but also incompetence. Massive regulation which has been added. That's like the folks in California with the fires now discovering the amount of regulation that has been added since their house was maybe built like 50, 60 years ago. But
Yeah.
good luck rebuilding. But anyway,
Yes.
why does that happen? Or like, why does all that stuff break down? One of the most influential concepts that I've discovered many years ago was after the space shuttle blew up. There was a big investigation, like, why did it happen? Why did it blow up?
And then was involved in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it ended up being, if I'm not mistaken, the O-rings. They were frozen, stuff like that. But what they actually found out is that the concept is called normalization of deviance. Is that
Yes.
everything is expensive? The parts of a space shuttle. So what do we need to do? Well, cut costs. Okay, so we make it. I'm gonna oversimplify it. We make that thing a little bit thinner. It's still more than good enough to do the job, but it costs us X amount of money less, and we do that for all the parts, so we save
Yes.
money and so on.
Yes. Yes.
And then and this happened over and over, and the engineer started saying, like, folks, we don't have enough margin of error here. And the answer was, well, nothing went wrong so far, so
Oh
shut the
yes.
fuck up
Yes.
until something went wrong. And
Yes.
and and this is the issue, and this brings us back full circle to the beginning of the conversation. People who don't understand how things work make changes, and sometimes they're big changes, sometimes they're small ones that just accumulate, and eventually something breaks down. With
Yes.
the level of comfort that we have in modern society, thanks to technology, more and more you have people who have no understanding either A, about the systems, but also, like, justice on fence. Don't remove this stuff if you don't know why it was put there.
Yes.
We can argue that maybe something has become obsolete and anachronistic, so we don't need that anymore. Total agreement. But you have to get rid of it from a position of knowledge and understanding.
Yes.
When that has been lacking for generations, which is what I blame our politicians.
Yes.
You guys have never been punched in the face. I did my
Yes.
military service. You didn't. You were never told by somebody, shut the fuck up and march. And you don't get to do whatever you want. Never went through that. You can't understand it. Um, there was stabbing in England recently. The the government has now decided that, well, the guy bought that knife online, so clearly that's a problem. So from now on, what we're gonna do is that you buy a knife online, you need two pieces of ID: your ID and then a video being recorded that we can actually see it's you who bought the knife. Well, that's gonna fix it. And so the level of incompetence, and again, this is how you break societies.
Yeah.
Everybody who has even a little bit of experience with violence will say that will A, do nothing, solve the problem, B, backfire
Yes.
tremendously.
Yes.
Accumulate. Same thing that's been going on in Germany. Why is the far right rising? Well, people are getting tired of getting stabbed and having their sons and daughters and parents killed. And it's been
Yes.
going on and on. And a while ago, there was another stabbing. And then the father of the woman who was stabbed, or the girl, was with the prime minister in a studio and saying, like, you keep saying that you're going to fix this, that you're going to get rid of the criminals that are here, under the guise of asylum. But you never do. How many more people have to get killed? And he was very calm. And you can see the prime minister, or the chancellor, I should say, is like, yeah, I understand now. You feel like, yeah, but you still haven't done anything, or just, marginally he has done something.
Right.
You can't keep doing that and not expect society to break, and then
Yes.
you get revolutions and massive unrest.
And that's a problem. Now, going back to the O-ring, I actually read Richard Feynman's thing, what he said about the, shuttle disaster. And he figured he was going to have to go into all this work and find it, et cetera. And the first thing he walked into was all the engineers saying, have you looked at the O-rings? Look at the O-rings. That's the problem. And, they did. And it's like, oh, yeah. Then everything you said about, right. It's like, but the engineers are going, guys, that's a problem. And then they kept on getting blown off.
Yep.
Now, there's another thing, which tying back to your experience about getting punched. Brett Weinstein was a professor at Evergreen College.
Yep.
And I mean, when you talk about Rogan floating to the, this guy in his original days was a rabid progressive. And then the students tried to kidnap him and, all this. And he's kind of floated further, but he was talking about something in a trigonometry interview. And he said, one guy said reality, and he goes, I prefer to call it the unforgiving. What do you have in your life that you do that is unforgiving? Okay. As an anchor to reality. You have to do this. You have to do it this way, because if you don't, you die. And he was talking about the disconnect between the unforgiving. And I'm not really sure I like that term, but okay, I can understand why. But when you get people floating, it's like, all right, I don't have experience. Another term I've picked up lately is ground truth. That's what intelligence tells you versus what's really happening on the ground. Right. And any way you talk about it, it's taking away from the reality of the situation and thinking you understand it from an intellectual standpoint.
Yeah.
Right. Which, again, looking at the engineer going, either you're lying to me or you've never worked a construction site. And it's funny because the further people get into believing intellectually, and we can talk about this with martial arts as well, right? Does what you do keep you from getting punched in the face? That's where the rubber hits the road. And it's amazing when you watch the process, and maybe you need to get older to see this, but when you watch the process of floating away, that, like, I don't know if you're familiar with a movie called The Pentagon Wars. Okay, it talks about the Bradley assault vehicle in the United States, and the thing was a total clusterfuck. And one of the problems that they found is that if you fire tracers and hit the Bradley, it not only punched the armor, which was insufficient, but the tracer would ignite the gas tank. Little problem. Right. But what they did to pass the test is they put water in the gas tanks and then shot it with the tracers. And you kind of look at it and go, how many times has somebody done this? How many times has somebody taught something in, say, the martial arts that doesn't work? Right. And what they do is that they kind of fudge the environment, right? They fudge it so it does appear to work in that environment. Right? Rory Miller's One Step, his version.
Yep.
Well, I always thought that was cool, and he says that's actually me. I came up with this misunderstanding the one step drill. And it's like, it's a really good teaching tool. I like that. But then talking to Sam Walker, who does Goju, classic Goju, his version of one step sparring is you start slow, you work your way up, everybody's doing correct mechanics, etc. And then once the person can reliably get the components that need to be there, you up the power and the speed. Right? So yes, it is one step, but this guy is coming at you hard enough with only one move that if you don't do it correctly, he's going to not drive your nose at the back of your skull. Right? And it's the testing of the mechanics to make sure it works. Well, take that away, and all you get is people who are doing their forms waving their arms. Right? So, yeah, the disconnect from reality, and as he says, unforgiving, because, hey, if somebody's trying to hit you and your mechanics aren't right, he's going to hit you. Doesn't matter your lineage. It doesn't matter your deadly fighting style. The disconnect of what works versus what we think works. And I'm really upset, and I can use martial arts as an example, but I'm very upset how common that has become.
Yeah.
In all levels, all aspects of life.
I think that ties in well with normalization of deviance.
Yes.
Because we've got so much modern technology basically keeping us safe, making our lives easier. Like you said, we don't need to, chop wood anymore. We just, flip the thermostat on and there's heat coming magically out of the radiator. We're done. So people have no idea all the systems that are there, as we mentioned. And it's the same thing with self-defense, martial arts, and so on, normalization of deviance. Well, I've always done it this way and it never went wrong. Okay, yeah, but you've only done it in sparring, light sparring in the dojo with a bunch of people that you've been training with for a long time, and you're a black belt and they're not. So you can easily handle them. You know what they do. They have the same instructor. You've never tried this outside. You've never had a Muay Thai guy come in and actually try to kick you. And you don't have to, but you're normalizing something that works within a certain tolerance of error. And then when you go outside of it, it's still okay. And as long as it kind of works, that's fine. But there will be a point where A, it doesn't work, and B, somebody else who is not you can make it work. And this is really frustrating because people prefer to have a more like, black and white answer. The best thing I came up with many years ago, and I checked with Justin, and he said it's okay to use it that way because we're talking about very complex physics and so on. And says I can live with that. Is an emergent dynamic system. So again, oversimplifying, dynamic system is a system with many different components, and they all relate to each other in a certain way, and you can try to derive laws from that. Okay, this is a principle, or this is a law, this is how the system works, and so on. The emergent aspect is that you can only do it afterwards. And my position, my theory is that this is how violence works. Whether it's combat sports, whether it's street violence, whether it's whatever it is, doesn't matter. Violence is that I've been doing my Patreon for 7 years now. I have seen, if not tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of videos, actual CCTV footage, CCTV footage and video footage of actual violence happening, all sorts. I can, and you're an expert in that field, so you know what I'm talking about. We can both be watching a video of something in the street. We both say, it's going to happen. They give it a few more seconds, and punches are going to start flying. Right. We pause the video. Neither one of us can predict what the end will be. Impossible. You
True.
can say, well, most likely, the way I see this guy acting, there's a good chance because he's already in a bladed position. And look at that guy, you can see that he just did a witness check, so he's ready to strike in the next second. We can see the principles and the quote unquote laws that we see, or dynamics that we can recognize from having seen all and witnessed and experienced previous stuff, but you cannot predict beforehand. Afterwards, when we watch the full video, we can do a full analysis and breakdown of like, okay, this is what happened, this dynamic, that dynamic, and so on. And that is why that guy is now lying bleeding on the floor and the other guy is laughing over his unconscious body. But not beforehand.
Yes.
And what people want, especially people who have not been exposed to reality, again, normalization of deviance, is a bunch of techniques, systems, principles, and so on that pretend to give you that answer beforehand. Do this, then that.
Yes.
It's not how it works, but we don't like that. And we're used to living in a society where they just say, you want warmth, thermostat on.
The switch.
Light, flip the switch, light is on. That's how it works. It's not how life works on this planet.
No. Now, I'm going to do two things with this. Number one is I'm going to tell you what I've learned dealing with attorneys doing expert witness work in court. As I started talking, because one of the favorite tricks attorneys will do, is it not possible that that wasn't what he was planning, right? No. And if you have the skill of like, oh no, here it comes, that drives you nuts. I started talking about probable and possible. Now, given these circumstances, there are like, and hypothetically, 3 probable outcomes. It's going to go this way, probable. One of these, don't know which one, right? But we know this is most likely. Then when you start talking about possibles, okay, it's interesting. Over here is, given these circumstances, this is what probably will happen. In order for possibility to be present, there has to be other factors.
Yep.
Okay. That, sure, is it possible? If these factors were present, yes, it is possible. Now, that one is a really useful way to explain, look, you're looking at possible and probable when you're trying to figure out what's going to happen. And you can know it's, gee, this guy just bladed, he dropped his hand. Gee, I wonder what's coming. So that one. The other point of this is, what does flipping the light, what does that do to our thinking? What does that do to how we think, what levels we think on? Since we don't have to think about light, flipping the switch, right? We just, my God, what happened? We flipped the switch and nothing happened. Oh, okay. Subroutine. Check the light bulb, right? Check the power. Okay. But you don't actually get out of that mindset of where you have to create light.
Yep.
Right. Or into the mindset where you have to create light. So you don't understand what it takes to get light. Right. And that's where what becomes a self-evident answer to this problem is way connected from reality. That's where I've really started, pushing this idea of, do you understand what it takes to get that, or how things work in reality? Right. And the answer is, most of the people who think they know about how things work don't. And that really screws up their thinking about doing anything practical.
Again, bringing it back to martial arts. Yesterday I was teaching MMA class, and we were doing defense against an armbar. did a bunch of them, and I showed them a specific defense, and somebody was having a hard time with it, and I said, look, who here could drive a car? Hands go up. I'm like, did you learn to drive a car by going, on the Brussels ring at night when it's raining during rush hour?
I,
No.
think, I take it this is all bad. Describe.
It's only, one of the most hectic places traffic wise in Europe. No, you did it on a parking lot with nobody there. You went into first gear and you didn't touch the gas. You just let the car pull itself and you take some big turns. Maybe you went to second gear, but no faster than that. And you did all that stuff for a long time before you even thought about driving on the road, which was like a small, quiet country road, maybe, where there's no incoming traffic. That's how you learned. Fast forward several years, you're on the Brussels ring when it's raining or freezing and there's ice on the road and it's rush hour and it's messed up. And now you can handle that stuff. What I just showed you guys, when we practice, when we learn it, we, like you said, with Goju, you learn one step, you get all the mechanics right, you get this right, you get that right, but you learn first. And once you have it down, not just know it intellectually, but you've drilled this incessantly so that as soon as this situation happens, you're going to have to turn that thumb over. You're going to have to grab his leg, and you have like a split second to do that. But because you've been doing this and you understand the technique, the principle, and so on, now you can do it against somebody who's trying to slam that armbar onto you, as opposed to right now when you learn this for the first time.
Right.
And again, this idea of understanding that, and I think for that, things like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu are really good, is look, there's multiple steps you have to take until you get to the choke or the joint manipulation.
Right.
Now, you can skip steps, but the more you skip steps, the less likely that you're going to get to that point. And I'm sure there are a bunch of techniques where you can just like dive in, like you can do a flying armbar. Yes, less steps and very, very dynamic, but also tends to be, hit and miss, 50-50, high risk, high reward. But most of the time you're trying to be a lot more strategic and go through these steps. And I said this often to my students, like, understand that there are steps. Unlike throwing a punch, which you can do in a fraction of a second, here it's going to take longer. Not everything. Some things are really fast. But once you throw the guy on the ground and you go into side control and you want to get to mount, you're going to have to take a few steps, especially if he puts up a defense. He's not going to give that to you. Now, when we learn to get from side control to mount, we're going to do this slow. He's not moving. He's letting you do everything. And eventually, he's going to bit by bit give you resistance. And then we end with rolling, where you started side control and I say go, and he's going to get out, and you're going to try to get the mount, and we'll see what happens. And all of a sudden, a bunch of more learning happens. And it's the same thing with, like you said, you don't know how to make light, you don't know how to make heat and fire. Well, once the electricity and the gas goes away, you're on your own. The planet still tries to kill you.
Well, you said it's not simple like a punch. It's like,
a punch can be done in a fraction of a second.
yes.
Many grappling techniques will take multiple seconds.
It'll take time.
Much longer.
The thing is, the reason I shifted over to talking about martial mechanics is it takes it out of the mindset of it being woo-woo and, traditional and, ancient warriors into the more practical. What do you need to what do you absolutely need to make this move work? What has to be present? Because so much of the techniques and the analogy, you may have heard me talk about cars without engines, once or twice. It's detailed, it's pretty, etc., but it doesn't have what it takes to go. Right? And getting people so they can unconsciously make sure that those elements are present. Right. And it really is walking and chewing gum at the same time. Right. That, okay, you need to have these things present for it to work. But if you're panicked and you haven't ingrained it, you're not going to do it. Okay. Something's going to be a mess. You may end up with that hand flopping out there, but that what you're calling a punch is not the same thing as something that has mechanics. And it's funny because when you know the mechanics, you can see it and you can help people find them, right? You can, you can articulate it, but then when you see people who are teaching who don't have the mechanics, it's like, these people are not ever going to be able to do anything. And if it does happen, it's dumb luck.
Yeah. Well, I was emailing with Laura Christensen recently,
Mm-hmm.
and we were talking a little bit about that, and what I see often nowadays is that, again, we're getting old, so we're seeing younger generations of instructors coming up, mostly via social media. Nothing wrong with that. I remember being young and stupid and thinking I knew everything, and that's fine. I kid myself into thinking maybe I'll learn to be more humble and maybe actually learn some more, so that what I say now maybe has more value than what I said, I don't know, 30 years ago. It's called being a human being and getting older and progressing.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to always be mindful of that when I watch what a bunch of young people or younger instructors are showing now. And but a lot of it is like, I you're saying these words, but and I'm sure somebody told you these words, so you're saying the right words, but it is clear for what you're showing that you have a limited grasp of what they actually mean. So
Yes.
you can say all the right words, say the concept, like this is the concept of yada, 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 and you give the definition because you read it on Wikipedia, and you can say that, and you can demonstrate the move. But by merely watching how you move and what is not present in everything that you're doing, um, somebody who maybe is a little bit further down the road in experience and training and knowledge can actually see, well, this is, like you said, like these elements are missing. And there's nothing wrong with that as long as you understand that there is stuff missing. And then we get to this whole new YouTube generation, guys who are really good, and some of them are really good martial artists or instructors, and they're very popular. And you see them reinvent things that is Fairbairn and Sykes, stuff that is like a century old
Yeah.
from
Yes.
from the Shanghai days when it's
Yes.
fighting the triads and stuff,
Yes.
and Get Tough, those kind of books. And I had that discussion with a guy who's like, I developed my own system and this and that, and he's showing Second World War combatives. I'm like, I know a good book you might like.
Yeah.
And I sent him the link. Never heard from him again. I guess he's still pissed off at me. But I'm like, you're reinventing the wheel, and then we get to Bob Orlando's cycle of evolution and devolution of
Yes.
martial arts,
Yes.
which we've talked about before. So, um, and I'm going to end that thought with a quote that I heard, and I forget where it was. It might have been Dan Carlin. It might have been somewhere else. I don't remember where I heard it, but it was recently. He said, everything has been said before, but because people didn't listen, we have to repeat it.
There's also something else that, um, I don't, were you at the first barbecue?
No, I think second or third. I'm not sure.
Okay. Somebody once asked me if there was anything that I really regretted writing, and that I would change now that I have years of experience. And at the time I said, yeah, I wouldn't be so, hard on karate. But the thing was, I had seen a lot of commercialized karate, a lot of strip mall or commercialized, whatever you want to call it. Again, this is where I came up with the idea of a car without an engine. And at the first barbecue, I watched Tristan do his kata, and I stood up in the back of the room and yelled, "That would work." Okay? Now, the thing was, I was seeing the little subtle tweaks in there that were missing from so many other people. And that actually got into a different point where, let's see, I have two stories. Number one, Bob Orlando came to the school that Diana was teaching at, and he was teaching, and it was a commercialized school, etc. And one of the people walked up and says, isn't it wonderful we have all this stuff in our system? And Diana was like, no, we don't. Right. But Sam Walker had another case where a similar sister art, he was doing a kata at a competition. And the guy from the sister art walked up and says, you got a lot of extra movement in your kata. Right? The stuff that I'm looking at and I'm going, oh my God, I don't want to get hit by that. You know? But it's like, oh yeah, like this wiggle, etc. And it's, yeah, the not understanding. You know, I never understood like waiting, waiting to the end of the punch and then snapping because it'll tear flesh. That made no sense to me. However, talking to Sam, it's like, no, it's not tearing flesh. But once you make impact, when you rotate like that and continue to drive in, it separates the muscles. Right. And it's like, that makes sense. Right. But it's the timing of it. And not understanding that, no, it's not just here on the surface that, oh, I'm going to tear your flesh. Right. It's what they don't know. And then they have to reinvent the wheel to get it to work. But most of the time, they reinvent square wheels.
But a lot of it is also that I see is the disdain for traditional martial arts and their training methods. And I've talked about this a lot, written about this a lot as well. There's much to complain and criticize traditional martial arts for, because a lot of the training methods are antiquated or counterproductive. But there's a lot of good there still. And if you haven't gone through that process of training for a long time, I mean, I've been doing traditional Tai Chi Chuan since '97 now, and it's my main art. Despite everything else that I also still do, this is the one that I focus on since '97 now. And it don't understand it on the most. And people do, I thought, let's fight. I'm like, okay, I'll go and ta-da. You know, almost 30 years later, I'm doing mostly that. And it's people don't understand what it is because they haven't gone through the whole training of that, and therefore it doesn't exist.
Yes,
I had a guy coming to my class. I was teaching Tai Chi, and it was a judo guy. And I think you're back.
yeah, I never left. You left.
Okay. I just suddenly your screen went blank. Anyway,
Same here.
bizarre. The guy asked, one of my students here has his black belt test. Can we work out a little bit on the side of on the mat here? I'm like, sure, no worries. We have plenty of space. And then afterwards comes to me, what do you guys do? I'm doing Tai Chi. That's not Tai Chi. I'm like, do you practice? No. I'm like, oh, okay. So you, who would only do judo, who has never done a Tai Chi class in his life, is telling me, who's been doing this for I think it was like 20 years back then, are telling me that I'm not doing that hard. Okay. And then the second story is I haven't been in a while because I was nursing an injury, but the BJJ class that I go to here, when he can, my son joins us, and obviously he tries to kill me every chance he gets. So when we roll, it's always father and son having fun, and we start on the ground, and I'm in Seiza, I'm kneeling position, and it's okay. He's standing up and he's trying to just get a clinch going, and at a certain point, I've got contact with his arm, and he's moving towards my left, and I stop him by just absorbing his body into my structure, and I hear the coach, the instructor say, "Yeah, that's a pure strength move." I didn't say anything, because I'm like, it's not. I'm here to learn, and I'm like, and I understand why he thinks that, but I'm willing to bet you've never done Tai Chi in your life. I don't think you have. At least not what I'm doing. And we just had an open mat pushing hands, which is competition type pushing hands. I just put a video online, and like a lot of people don't get it. And one of my students, my Tai Chi students, switched to BJJ, and he said when they got me on the ground, they messed me up. I was a child at
Mhm.
first, but they couldn't get me on the ground very easily because I was just doing pushing hands that
Uh-huh.
he learned from me. And he didn't train for 10 years or something, only trained a few years. But we do freestyle pushing hands pretty much every class. And it's like they didn't get it. They didn't understand like what's going on. And when I go to BJJ class, we roll for about half an hour. These are 5-minute rounds with about, maybe 20 seconds rest between,
Mhm.
30 at best. My age against those young guys, so I gotta last. So what I do is, at the very least, the first minute, we start standing, pushing hands so they can't get a good grip and can't take me down.
Mhm.
At the very least. And I'm like, okay, 4 more minutes to go. Now we can go to the ground. So I'm not too completely winded at the end of it.
Right.
And
Yeah.
it's just that not invented here, so it doesn't exist.
Yeah. You're not invented. On the other hand, I also remember the time I was talking and teaching people about stance integrity. And you said that doesn't always work, right? It's really easy to knock people down, understand this. Don't let yourself be bowled over this. And it's like, that doesn't work. Okay, if I remember right, we were in a restaurant.
We were in Outback.
Okay, out back. And you proved me wrong. It's like, your evil Tai Chi magic. But it's like, you should be moving back by now. But it's like, nope, nope. I'm still not quite sure how you managed to channel the force, but it pretty damn impressive. You
Well,
know,
what I showed is just proof of concept. It's like, okay, so it's not supposed to work. You pushed and I don't go off balance, and then I stand on one leg and you still can push me over. Okay, so this is proof of concept. Nobody fights like this.
yeah,
It's not the point. This is a skill that takes many, many, many years to develop, like many skills that seem like magic. And it has a limited application when it comes to self-defense. However, it is there.
yeah.
And
It's
if you train really, really, really hard for a long time, you have a chance at integrating that skill into actually functional self-defense.
yes,
But it's
yeah,
difficult, and it's painstaking, and it's frustrating. And my teacher, the head instructor of our style, um, always said that Tai Chi is a harsh mistress.
yes,
It
yes,
it's difficult to please her. She's totally worth it, but she's very, very demanding. It takes a long time to woo her and make her happy.
yes. And that, I had a student, and Rory came into town to teach a seminar down in Colorado Springs. And hey, let's all go. Now, this student who has a Tai Chi background, right, and is evil in the grounds that he always will find structure,
Yeah.
right? And you're doing a technique against him, and he can't help himself but getting structure, right? And he was talking, he'd been complaining. It's like, what are we learning here? Because, this stuff doesn't. So we go down to an open seminar, and he's playing with black belts from other styles. And it's like, these people are like marshmallows. They have no structure. And it's like, yeah, that's, you know, we're using structure all the time, right? We're focusing on that. And you're also going up against with your fellow students, people who know how to do the structure thing. But you get out there with these other black belts, and they're like putty, and that's the thing of if you have the structure, and it takes time to get that structure. Right? Yeah, it's there, but I mean, one of my Sifu in the five family system for 6 months, I did nothing but walk. I just move, walk, move, walk. And one day, as I'm walking and he's focused, he body checks me unexpectedly, just bam, runs into me. And I'm like, what are you doing? And then it dawned on me what had not happened. I didn't go flying ass over tea kettle. It's okay. There's something important here.
And I think the same. I mean, it applies to everything. It's like you haven't been punched until a boxer punches you. You haven't been kicked until a Muay Thai guy kicks you. You haven't grappled until a high level BJJ guy takes you on the ground, or a catch as catch can high level guy takes you to the
Hmm.
ground. You don't know what you have no idea what that is. And there's, I just talked about Tai Chi, about the complexity a long time. In
Hmm.
those arts and systems, there is the same level of complexity and difficulty. Stuff like Hicks and Gracie used to talk about invisible jiu-jitsu. You can't see it, but you feel it. Um, there's stuff there that is just as difficult to get and makes it look like magic. I rolled with the teacher of my student who's a black belt, who's really good, and I'm much bigger than him. Had him in Kesakatame, which is the scarf hold, one of my favorite techniques. I couldn't get anywhere, and he just chilled out, and he had to work because I'm pretty strong, but he got out of it, and
I
there was
know.
nothing I could do against it.
Yeah.
If and I knew and I could feel that if I let go of this grip like for half a second, A, he's free. B, next thing I've got a rear naked choke or something else slammed into me. It's over. There is no letting this guy loose. And he got out eventually. And he got out, and then he was diving on top. We were like, okay, dude, you win. He's like, well, no, stop, don't stop, man. Dude, what do you think I'm gonna do against you? You're gonna choke me out. I know what's coming next. This was just, I'm just having fun here, and I was checking out the training and to see if before my son started training, just to see what he's like. Because
Right.
there's lots of assholes in the world, in the martial arts world. So, and then I
Yeah.
said to my son, go train there. Good school, good teacher. He's a very skilled guy.
Yeah. He knows what
Um,
he's doing. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. We gotta move on to the Patreon section because otherwise Peggy's gonna kill me if I'm too late for dinner. And I'm sorry to say, Mark, but we're having sushi today. I can't. She didn't know that I was talking to you, so we're not doing this on purpose. But
No, but
we're.
to me, it was on purpose.
What are you working on right now?
Right now, I am only working, I mean, mainly working on the fantasy book,
Okay.
which is really kind of fun because I get to think, I get to challenge myself with, okay, what if? Now, how would these people handle
Yeah.
it? Right? And the way the elevator pitch for the thing is a gender studies student and a Green Beret have to team up to save the world.
Please tell me there's also some comedy in there.
There is some situational things that are funny, right? But it is just the miscommunication, right? Before they get on the same page. And I'm having fun talking about a real actual existential threat that happens every 300 years. Okay? It has to be handled. Now they figured out how to handle it. And the problem is over the 300 years, what works gets misinterpreted and
Mm,
twisted. Right. So what we've been talking about with this, during this conversation. So yeah, basically right now I'm writing fantasy.
okay. Do you know when it's gonna come out, or is that too soon to tell?
Um, God willing and the river doesn't rise, I hope to have it out by June.
Okay, cool. Neat. All right. And again, before we get to the second part on Patreon, where can people reach you?
Like no nonsense self defense .com, markmacyoung.com. Both of those will get,
I'll,
get
I'll,
you attack.
I'll put your Facebook
And Facebook.
and the links as well. Yeah. So, folks, if you're new to the podcast, we've got a show notes page for every episode. Go to winsblong.com/ and then the number of the episode. I'm not quite sure which number this one will be because I got previously recorded ones that still have to come out. And then you'll find links to to Mark's pages and then social media and some other stuff that we mentioned. And I'll put a link to the Patreon part, which is where we're going now. I've got a bunch of really good questions for you.
Oh, by the way, I also have a Patreon page. I forgot about that.
All right.
Yes.
Okay. I'll add that to the link section. All right, Mark, as always, thank you so much for taking the time to, indulge in hearing me rant and rave. And I hope the audience enjoyed some of it as well. Mostly your part, my ranting and raving, they know what they get. So you are the positive part of this discussion.
No, 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 no. I learned a lot from you just listening. Like, oh, is that what's going on there?
Well, I was raised on chocolate and beer and waffles and fries, so
Oh, now you're just getting cruel. The sushi was bad, man. And by the way, for your folks, I'm from the coast, and I ended up in a landlocked state, so the sushi is right. And yeah, he's torturing me.
This is a running joke for I think 20 years.
Over.
Yeah, it's been going on for a long time. Okay, folks. Thank you all for listening or watching if you're watching this online, and we'll talk to you guys next time. Bye bye.